Hi. It started on a Wednesday. That's important because she never called me on Wednesdays. It was the one day of the week her schedule was a mess. Meetings in the morning, lunch with clients, gym in the evening. But that day, my phone lit up around 10:15 a.m. Her name on the screen. Hey, she said, voice light, almost rehearsed. I'm going to be away for a couple of days. Could you swing by and water my plants? I remember pausing, a little thrown off by how casual she sounded. We weren't together anymore, not officially. It had been a slow separation, a kind of limping withdrawal rather than a clean break. But even in our drifting apart, she'd never asked me to do something like that. I asked her where she was going. Oh, you know, just a quick trip, she said. And then, with the faintest laugh, don't snoop too much while you're there. I told her I wouldn't. I meant it too. I wasn't in the business of digging for trouble anymore. The thing about her apartment was, it was still full of pieces of me. A couple of mugs I'd left behind, the blanket from our first Christmas folded over the couch, a few of my books stacked on the nightstand. I didn't think much of it until I stepped inside that day and felt how still it was. The blinds were half drawn, letting in enough light to make dust float in the air. Her plants sat by the window in their usual neat row, succulents, a fiddle-leaf fig, and a vine I could never remember the name of. I filled the watering can, went through the motions. It wasn't until I set the can down that I heard it. A shuffle. Not loud. Not the kind of sound you'd notice unless you weren't expecting it. Hello. I called out. Nothing. Just the hum of her fridge. I told myself it was probably the building settling, or maybe a neighbor's noise carrying through the walls. I moved to the kitchen to rinse the can, and that's when I saw him. He wasn't startled. That's what stayed with me the most. He stood there, shirtless, holding a glass of water like he'd been there 100 times before. His eyes scanned me in a way that wasn't aggressive, but definitely wasn't friendly. Oh, he said. You must be. He stopped himself, smirked, and took a sip of his water. It felt like the room shrank around us. I didn't ask who he was. I didn't need to. The familiarity in his posture told me everything. He belonged here in a way I no longer did. I put the watering can in the sink, dried my hands on the towel hanging by the oven. My chest felt tight, but I wasn't angry, not the kind of anger that explodes. This was the kind that sinks. I'll just finish up and get out of your way, I said quietly. He shrugged, like it made no difference to him whether I stayed or left. He leaned against the counter, watching me as I gathered my things. On my way out, I hesitated at the door. That's when it hit me. Her parents were coming back from their trip that afternoon. They had a key, but the lock had been sticking lately. She'd mentioned it a couple of weeks ago. Without thinking too hard about it, I left the door unlocked. Not wide open, just clicked the handle down so it wouldn't catch. And then I walked away. Her parents called me that evening. Not her parents. It was her mother's voice I heard first. We walked into something when we got home today. She didn't sound angry, more like she was still trying to process whatever she'd seen. I leaned against my kitchen counter. A pause. There was a man here. I could picture her face, the way she probably pinched the bridge of her nose when she was trying to choose her words carefully. He didn't seem surprised to see us, almost like he'd been told we were coming. I stayed quiet. He said he was a friend, her mother continued. Your friend? The question was hopeful, like maybe if the answer was yes, it would make the situation less uncomfortable. No, I said simply. Another pause. Then her father's voice came on the line, gruff and straight to the point. We don't know what's going on between you and her, but you might want to have a word with her. I thanked them for letting me know and hung up. The thing is, her parents always liked me. Not in the polite, we'll tolerate you for our daughter's sake way, but genuinely. I'd fixed their porch railing one summer without being asked. Helped her dad move his workshop tools when he decided to reorganize the garage. We had our own inside jokes. So the fact that they were the ones telling me about this, it stung in a deeper way. 2 hours later, my phone lit up with her name. I let it ring out. Then it rang again. And again. On the fourth try, I picked up. What the hell? She said, skipping past hello. I could hear voices in the background. His voice, low, then her shushing him. You left the door open, she accused. Did I? I asked. I kept my tone even. My parents walked in on, she cut herself off. You knew they were coming. Yeah, I said. There was a long stretch of silence. Then, you're petty, you know that? I almost laughed. Petty would have been telling her parents exactly who the man was and how long he'd been in the picture. Petty would have been moving her plants into the hallway to wither. This wasn't petty. This was letting things happen as they would. She hung up on me. For the next week, I didn't hear from her. But I did hear from other people. Through the quiet grapevine that always seems to find its way to you when your life is starting to shift. Her parents had stopped by more than once. They'd seen him there again. Heard his car pull into the lot late at night. And I knew, without anyone saying it outright, that the image she'd kept polished for them was cracking. I didn't set out to ruin her. I just stopped protecting her. That's the part people don't tell you. How much of someone's dignity you hold in your hands when you love them. How many little cover-ups you perform without even thinking about it. Late arrivals explained away. Phone calls ignored. A certain kind of tiredness in their eyes dismissed as work stress. Take that away, and the truth rushes in like cold air. By the second week, her father called me again. This time, no careful pauses. I don't know what she's doing, he said, but it's not right. I told him I didn't either. And for once, that wasn't a lie. It was 3 weeks before she showed up at my place. I knew she would eventually. She's never been one to leave a story unfinished. It was a Sunday afternoon, quiet except for the low hum of my kettle. I opened the door to find her standing there, sunglasses on, one hand on her hip, like she'd been practicing this pose the whole drive over. "Can we talk?" she asked. I stepped aside. She didn't move right away, like crossing the threshold might feel like surrender. Eventually, she walked in, scanning the apartment as if she were looking for signs of how I'd been living without her. "You embarrassed me," she said, her voice sharp but quieter than I expected. I poured tea into 2 mugs and slid one across the counter toward her. "I didn't say a word to them," I replied. Her sunglasses came off. She looked tired, not the glamorous kind of tired she could fix with concealer, but the kind that sits in your bones. "You left the door open." "I did." She shook her head, letting out a humorless laugh. "And you knew what would happen." I met her eyes. "I knew they'd see you." "That's it." Her jaw tightened. "You don't understand. My parents, they've always seen me as," she stopped herself. "Now they think I'm human." I offered. That landed. She blinked hard. "You've always had this way of making it sound like you're not hurting me when you are." I leaned on the counter. "And you've always had a way of pretending the truth is cruelty." For a while, the only sound was the tick of the wall clock. Then she said, almost in a whisper, "It's not what you think." I waited. "He's just someone I've been seeing. It started after you and I." She stopped when she saw my face. "I'm not asking for a timeline," I said. "I'm just done being the guy who waters your plants while you're somewhere else with someone else." She flinched. Maybe at the word done, maybe at how even my voice was. "You could have called me out," she said. "You could have yelled, made a scene. But you didn't. You just left the door open." "That was enough," I said. And I meant it. Because what happened after wasn't something I had to orchestrate. It unfolded on its own. Her parents started asking questions she couldn't answer neatly. Friends who'd only known the polished version of her got pieces of the mess. Whatever she and he had, it wasn't ready for that kind of light. She finished her tea in silence, set the mug down carefully, and walked to the door. Hand on the knob, she turned back once. "You were always better at endings than I was." After she left, I stood there for a while, listening to the echo of the door closing. I realized I didn't feel triumphant, or vindicated, or even angry. I just felt free. Some people think closure comes from answers. For me, it came from doing nothing but letting the truth be seen. No speeches, no revenge, just a door left open. And when I thought about those plants by her window, I knew they'd survive just fine without me. Bye-bye.